Well, the refs became quite the storyline this postseason, and while the Super Bowl, it definitely kind of died down due to the fact that it was such a blowout, but there was still some talk about the refs. A lot of people saying, well, I guess this is how the refs argument dies down, right? DeAndre Hopkins talked about how, hey, I thought, what happened about saying the refs were the reason that we got here, things like that. So, okay, well, let's talk about the refs one more time. Why not? For old time's sake. Let's start off with this one because there were definitely some bad plays, bad calls in this Super Bowl. Like, for example, this play, it was very early on, first drive of the game, 4th down and 2. You see A.J. Brown on Trent McDuffie, and you're going to see a couple things. First, you're going to see that A.J. Brown wins, and then you see a flag come out right after. This is the flag calling this offensive pass interference. And, listen, was there some contact? Yeah, there was some contact. I do think it hurt that McDuffie fell down. I wonder if McDuffie doesn't fall down, if that gets called. I don't know, but ultimately it gets called. Me personally, I didn't agree with this call, and I thought, man, here we go again with this the whole Chiefs thing. And I am not a NFL rigged guy at all. I don't even know if I think the Chiefs actually get as much calls in their favor as people act like they do. But this one, you're thinking, oh my God, here we go again. I guess fortunately for the NFL, I suppose, the Chiefs would be on the wrong end of a call shortly after. So heading over here, it's now a 3rd down and 5 situation, and this is a big play in the game as well. So the Eagles had to punt on the last drive, but they get the ball back here. They're kind of just outside field goal range. I don't know if they try a 59-yarder or if they try to go for it. They probably go for it. Here, though, you're going to see that Jalen Hurts, this is a throw that's going to be a bit high, right? Sails on him a bit, but there's contact, and again, there is a flag. I'll show this angle. This will really show, I think, give us the clearest angle of what happened. Now, I want to go over the rule really quick. So one thing to note is Dallas Goedert on this play is a defenseless receiver, meaning he's going up for the ball and he doesn't have time after that to protect himself. So he gets special protections that you don't always get in a typical football play. One of those protections is that if the opposing player has significant contact to the head or neck area, whether it's intentional or not, it's a penalty. It's on the defender to control themselves, right? To control where their body is and how they hit a defenseless receiver. Here you see it's McDuffie's forearm, which kind of goes into the neck area of Dallas Goedert, does kind of right up into his helmet. That, by rule, is a penalty. So I get why a lot of people feel like it's weak. I think it's weak. I think they could have let it go in a Super Bowl, right? But this is going to be something that happens on a few of these where, just because it feels weak and just because you don't usually see something like this get called doesn't mean it is not an illegal play. Again, his forearm went to the neck area of Dallas Goedert. Again, it's kind of tough because it's almost like tight top chest area is where a lot of the contact goes to. So I can see the argument of why maybe it shouldn't be called. Personally, I think if I saw this once, I would keep the flag in my pocket. That's just where I'm at. But again, it's hard. You only have one angle. You only get one chance to do it, and they are taught to protect the players. So that's why they do it that way. But yeah, again, tough call in my opinion, but it is what it is. Now let's go over to just a truly bizarre call in this one, where, again, it is frustrating how in such an important game there were so many missed calls. And I'm not someone who says that, listen, I think the refs have, such a tough job. It is really difficult to see this stuff, and I do think that these are the best in the world. I know that's a hot take. You can say I'm just being a simp to the NFL, but, it is really difficult. I also think it's fair to say this was not a good performance by them, even with all of that stuff, included. This call was just a bad one. So it's a 4th down and 3. That's worth noting. You see that this field goal is made, but there was movement before the ball was snapped. Let's go to the angle to see the movement. So, okay, who moves first? As of right here, it clearly looks like the Chiefs player, 54, is the first guy to move. It looks to me like he got in the neutral zone. Maybe he didn't. I still can't really... It's close, right? I don't know how you can tell from that angle if he got in the neutral zone. Now, one thing I was thinking of that I should have mentioned when I made a video the night of the Super Bowl about this, but one thing that is worth mentioning, if 54 for Kansas City moved first and then an Eagles player moved, then it would technically be a false start if they felt like the 54 did not cross the neutral zone. If a defender moves but doesn't cross the neutral zone, then an offensive player moves and that's what draws the penalty, then that is a penalty, right? But that's not what they called. They called it on the snapper, and I don't know how that gets missed. Maybe they got the wrong number, but even that, this was weird. This really should have been if either nothing or should have been on the defense. And if it was on the defense, would have given the Eagles a first down. The Eagles also almost missed the next field goal, so it would have really been bad if that happened, but luckily they made it. Another call we have to talk about was this one. And again, 17-0 at this point, but still, I mean, if you're the Chiefs, you can potentially get the ball back on a 2nd down and 26 situation, maybe have a chance. Probably wouldn't have gone very well, but given how the game went, but at least at the time, it feels like a big play. You see that, so Hurts is trying to set up a screen pass. Saquon Barkley is the one he's trying to throw it to. Throws a bit off, still feels like Barkley could have maybe made the catch, but at that point, you're leaping up to make a catch, and you don't want to, bat it up or anything, so it's a tough situation. But you see Nick Bolton on this play. Watch how he is going to make contact with Saquon Barkley. Again, let's cut to the other angle to give just a clearer example of what happened. And this is another one where I want to really go over the rule. So there's 2 things worth noting. First, the defenseless receiver thing that I talked about earlier. To me, this is not, that has nothing to do with this particular play. There is more time for Barkley to potentially protect himself after this. The last one was Goedert got hit right after he wasn't able to make the grab. This one, there's more time. So to me, he is no longer a defenseless receiver. Also, the things that would qualify as an illegal hit on a defenseless receiver do not qualify here. So that's not what this is. This is the rule that Nick Bolton, quote-unquote, breaks on this play, which is unnecessary running, diving into, cutting, or throwing the body against or on a player who is 1, out of the play, or 2, should not have reasonably anticipated such contact by an opponent before or after the ball is dead. To me, it's that part. So they're essentially saying that this was unnecessary contact after Saquon Barkley reasonably anticipated the ball was dead. That's what they're saying. And here, though, you see Nick Bolton, and I mean, okay, you can read the rule that way. Again, there are some gray areas. To me, this is a bit of a gray area call, but I don't know. That just feels like Bolton is running in, trying to make a play. He takes 3 steps, I guess, which is more than they give you for a roughing the passer penalty, but less than they give you for anything else. This feels like a bit of a tight whistle here. And what stinks is that it was a 3rd down and 16, and now it's a 1st down and 10, which I've always been a believer in. I don't like automatic 1st down penalties. I think if it's 3rd and 26 and you get 15 yards, then it should be 3rd and 11. That's just how I've always viewed it. It kind of makes sense for defensive holding and pass interference, but everything else, that's my take, but that's, conversation for another day, I suppose. So yeah, I mean, ultimately not a great performance by the officials in the Super Bowl. Several calls that I don't agree with. A couple of just tough ones to call. I do think that Dallas Goedert play, to me, that's one where I'm glad I'm not an official and don't have to call it, even if I probably disagree with how they made their decision. And of course, there are going to be other ones that we can talk about. I mean, again, every football game, there's 100 little things we could bring up. I think there's a couple arguments people have made about this. To me, I say, some bad calls is what it is, because that's just how my brain works. But some people will have different thoughts. I've heard some people say this is when they find there was so much pressure on the league to not help out the Chiefs with calls anymore, that then they didn't help the Chiefs out with calls, and this is what happened. Well, they still kind of did on that first A.J. Brown play. I do kind of agree, though, that I do wonder if, the refs are human. They have to know that there is the narrative out there, and I do wonder if that played into some of this, not in they're trying to help out the Eagles, but just in maybe they're making an extra effort to not call some things. Because of course there was this one where Mahomes got hit in the face. That wasn't called. Maybe that gets called in an earlier game, but maybe they weren't sure if they saw it. And usually when you're not sure, you're still supposed to throw the flag, and maybe this time they didn't. I don't know. There is that possible psychological thing. Obviously, I don't think the officials said, okay, let's not rig it for the Chiefs this time. I think that's a little silly. I've also heard people say, oh, well, you see what happens when the league doesn't help out the Chiefs left and right, is now they really struggle. I think they struggled because the Eagles were better. That's what I think. I don't think it was because they weren't getting the calls. I mean, how many calls did they get? Even if you are the most biased fan in the world against the Chiefs, how many bad calls did they really get in that Buffalo Bills game? Even if every call went the Chiefs' way, or it went the Bills' way, it would have still been a competitive game, right? So I don't know about all that. And the other thing I'll say too, again, as a response to some of the Chiefs fans who are saying, oh, what happened to this being rigged? What happened to the Chiefs getting all the calls? Listen, I don't think the league is rigged. I don't think the NFL is rigged. If it were to be rigged, there is still only so much you can do to rig it, right? You can only, if the game is 34-0, you can't make some calls to get it back and, and close. Although, again, I would say on that roughing the passer penalty that was missed, could have made the game a little bit more interesting. They could have, it wouldn't have been, hey, I wouldn't have minded them rigging this a little bit, making the game a little closer, given how much of a blowout it was, although it was still an interesting blowout, I guess. But, yeah. As a whole, another rough performance. The refs got to figure something out. I mean, the league has to figure something out with this stuff. I think they need to be able to, I still feel like the sky judge is the move. Have someone in the booth who on every play is just like another ref, but instead of being on the field, they're watching every angle, and they can radio down to a ref and say, hey, actually pick up this flag, or hey, actually you should throw a flag on this one, that kind of thing. Don't slow the game down doing it, just have an extra guy there. That feels like a way to get some of these better, because let's just be honest, it was a rough postseason for the officials. It just was. There are ways to fix it. Hopefully the NFL goes about fixing it in some ways. And until then, I mean, no matter how good the rules are, no matter how good they get these calls right or wrong, people are still going to say things. But at least you can make people say things less when it isn't as bad as it was in these playoffs and in this game. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on all of this. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And, of course, as always, thanks for watching.